Hey Maggie.
Hi, how's it going, Mary?
Good. Hi everyone. I am Mary with Chief Financial Mom,
And I am Maggie with Make a Money Mind Shift.
and we are two financially minded moms here to talk to you about your money and answer your money questions. Maggie, I'm really excited because today we are talking about how to teach your kids about money. So this has been a thing going on in our house for quite a while. And for those listeners out there that don't know, I have three littles, all ages barely, actually. I have now a 6-year-old, but I had three, five and under. So now there's six and under. And so we've got a lot of little kids. And you would think most of the time, like, we'll teach money when they get older, maybe in high school, maybe in college. But I think it's really important that you start young because they're already forming ideas about money. They hear you talking about money. In fact, Maggie, I have to share this story with you. And Josh and I are very open about a lot of things with our kids. And I must have been talking something finances. We just had a new roof on our house. We put new carpet in. So a part of me is like, oh, look at all these new things. The other part of me is like, I'm vomiting money at the same time, right? So we've had a lot of these conversations. And my oldest daughter came up to me the other day and she brought me the cutest little Ziploc bag of coins and handed it to me and goes, Mommy, this is for you in case you and Daddy need some more money. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. So I want you to know that I wasn't consciously talking to my child about money. I wasn't consciously putting her in the midst of all these big financial transitions we're in the midst of right now. But she's picking up on these vibes. She's hearing these things, and they're a real part of her life, just as they are ours.
Yes. My gosh, that is so sweet. And that literally goes, Mary, back into money scripts, which Dr. Brad Klontz was a guest on the AFCP podcast recently. And he and his father had coined the term money scripts. And that goes back to our childhood where our loved ones, our parents and our grandparents talk to us about money, or they're talking to us about how they feel about money. And it's subconsciously carried into our own adulthood. So that's so good that you realize that now just by talking with your daughter. And honestly, that's the same thing with me. My boys are 8, 7, and 6. And, we waffle back and forth between different seasons of saying, okay, how are we going to talk to them about money? Is there a more poignant time right now because they're really interested in something that money plays in? And then other times it may not be as important. And so we're not always harping on money for sure, but I thought maybe today let's talk about some of our ideas and share with the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, one of the things that I've done recently with my kids, in fact, we've been doing this now for a couple of years. So, all of my kids were probably 4, 2, and 4 when were the oldest two when we started this. But they love going to the dollar store, and there is so much fun in them buying something. But I feel like that's such an opportune time, especially the dollar store, right, for these kids
Totally.
to learn. And so we started their little coin banks, and literally they're like maybe jam jars that you slice. Be careful not to slice your finger off. I think
Right.
there's more danger in getting the hole on top. But we didn't do it. I mean, they have piggy banks, but we really wanted to go old school with this. And it's been really fun. So they created them, they decorated them. They look like a hot mess, but it's theirs and they own it. And I think that's a part of it is letting your kids own whatever that is. And because it becomes theirs, right? And so we
Right.
started this a couple of years ago. We had this giant, it's now like an old goldfish jar of all our coins. And so we've just piled in the coins over time. Sorry, US government, who's having a coin shortage. They're probably at our house. Uh, but we've got all these coins. And so over time, I would find that these would be little incentives. So we have another jar that we use for, we call warm fuzzies, little warm fuzzies that we give them if they do something good. And we also have our coin jar. And I don't really have a specific rhyme or reason when I do something, but I just kind of do with what feels right. I don't always want their reward to be money. We learned this really early on with food and chocolate in particular. So my oldest, we did not give her any sweets until she was 2, and now she is my chocoholic. Like this kid lives for sugar. So I quickly learned the lesson: you can't hold back sugar and assume that they're not going to like it. Same thing with money. You can't just hold it back and assume it's going to be fine, right?
Right.
So
Right.
with this, I've just kind of integrate these different opportunities, kind of reward systems based on what feels right at the moment. So I feel like one thing for any mom or parent listening out there is don't feel like you have to have all the details to get started on something. Literally, we have jam jars and I give her a penny, right? Like, who thinks you're motivated by pennies? By the way, I hope that this lasts for a few more years, that I can motivate my kids with pennies, but it's a big deal to them to get a penny. And then we take all that money. So they like are little squirrels. And at the end, their reward is they get to go to the store and they get to go buy something at the dollar store, which luckily at the dollar store, they can actually afford to buy something with that. And along the way, we actually dump out. So before we go to the store, we actually dump out all the pennies. And this, I don't know, every couple months, we dump out all the pennies or quarters or dimes or nickels. Like kind of just say, oh, today you're a big helper. Go get a dime. You get a dime today, right? But we dump them out, we count them, and then we get that total amount and we say, okay, a third, you've got some going to charity. So we tithe with our church and we teach that 10% tithing. We teach giving to others. We teach saving. So they save some. And we kind of talk about the different numbers. We're not hard and fast, like a third, or a quarter or whatever. We kind of talk about it and it varies with what their needs are. If it's Christmas time, maybe we have them spend a little bit more than save as in the past. But then they get to go to the store and they get to vote. Last year, we let them pick their own Christmas presents for the sibling. And it was like the funnest thing. And like literally they're $1. Like, but it means so much more to them that they're spending their dollar than they are moms and dads. And it's great because then we get in the store and they're like, Mom, I want this and this and this. And it's okay. Let's count your pennies. Remember how to do that. And bless the hearts of those sweet cashiers at the front who literally are taking pennies as payments, and they're so patient and they're so cute with them. And so let your kids do it all, let back on that control and just let them have fun with it. And it's fun for you. It's a motivating force. And if you use it in a positive way, it doesn't have to be manipulation. It can be a reward. It can be a win or whatever. What are your ideas, Maggie? What do you guys do?
No, that's so good. I love the warm fuzzies, Jar. That's so cute. So one thing that we were doing as the boys were younger, before we started to give them money for things, is we would give them love and praise. And so they knew if we said love and praise, I usually would go and give them a hug and be like, love and praise and love and praise and love and praise. And kind of, there was just this funny thing, but they really enjoyed it. And as they're getting older, that's not cutting it. Love and praise is not cutting it anymore. And so every so often we will still do love and praise, but then other times, say one of my sons was very generous in allowing his brother to maybe play the electronics first. And so it's not every time, like you said, it's not so that they expect it. It's just that, you might kind of go in between with saying, okay, maybe I'll give a little bit of money this time, but maybe next time, that was really nice of you. I'm so glad that you did that for your brother. I'm so glad that you picked up. So what we're doing now in this season, now that we're back to school, so in the summertime, let me step back. In the summertime, it was Pokemon. It's very much Pokemon. And yes, for those who are wondering, Pokemon is back full force. So if you knew about it growing up, it's back. And we would go to a local baseball card store and we would have them count their money out. So they would give money for doing maybe different things around the house. We would give money for doing things that are expected as a family member, not necessarily chores yet. Because there's been enough people when I've talked with other parents that said you tie it to a chore and they're not motivated, that chore is not getting done.
Yep.
So we just talk about being a member of this family, what's expected of you. And so we would go ahead and give them money from time to time. There has been no set dollar amount at that point. So we would go to the baseball card store. They would have already counted out their money. They had a little Ziploc baggie that they knew that this is how much they could spend. And then we would go through the cards and we would talk about the different cards and the different values. There might be one card. I was actually talking to them about it last night. And I said, hey, we're going to record on YouTube tomorrow. What do you want to tell me about Pokemon cards? And they right away said, well, you can get a 10 pack for $4, but then this other card, that one card alone is $4. And we would talk about the value of it. And so that's teaching them that not everything is the same. And so that's teaching them that, that different part of money as well. Now that we're back to school, we're going back a little bit more into more of the quote routine, now that we're in the routine of school. And we're just saying again, okay, if you're going to be a member of this family, there's certain things expected of you. Maybe it's setting the table. Maybe it's putting your shoes on the shoe rack before you come inside, just different things. And we are only giving them $1 per week. And the reason why is because I've heard, you can give your age for the allowance and for 8, 7, and 6. And we just figured we want to start small. Like you said, when the kids are very little, pennies, amazing.
Yeah.
So when you start with $1, you're starting just with a baseline, and then we can add on other things that could be expected of our family, adding maybe in some chores, some other things that they can do with their brothers together. And then that way you're not all of a sudden fronting out all this cash every week and thinking, what did I start? Right. So we start very, very low to begin with, and we're going to add on as we go along.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that too, it's different. It's different for every family, everyone. It's different of your money history. I'm glad we're talking about this. In fact, we probably should do one in the near future about what money history and money scripts are, because that plays in. Essentially, it's what you grew up with, like you mentioned earlier. So all of that plays into it. But I think that the big takeaway that I'm hearing from this conversation today is it's not right and wrong. And there's not a perfect age to start or stop or anything else. It really could be taught very early on, like 2, literally. They get excited about pennies. They have no clue what to even spend it on, but that's okay. In fact, I'll share another little example. We just went to Monticello on Thursday. I am now homeschooling my oldest, and so I wanted to incorporate a history lesson. And so as we went to Monticello, one of the things I found out is, guess what? A nickel has Thomas Jefferson on the front. And then you flip it on the back and there's Monticello. So we use that as part of our history lesson. And so there's so many more components. Of course, math comes to mind when you're teaching about money, but there's so many other ways to incorporate money, and not just money, but the concept of economic stability and bargaining and economics, and what does that mean and why do we do it? And so that we're not tied to the ever-loving dollar, but
Right.
we're really more tied to the concepts around it, and we're talking about it, and that it is a comfortable subject. And I'll go kind of start back where we started, is the fact that my husband and I talk openly about money. It's not a hush thing that we only talk about in our bedroom or only when the kids aren't listening. It's something we talk about often, and we have discussions. We do it around the dinner table sometimes. We include the kids on these discussions too. And so it's good for them to hear that. And I think as you're listening to yourself and your language, one of the things to really be mindful of is how you talk about it, right? If you always say we don't have enough, that's going to be a scarcity mentality. Quite honestly, everyone has enough for something. Right there, it's your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and needs are different. Right. So make it a more of a plentiful, the glass half full rather than the half empty type discussions. But those are how we've done it, and we just wanted to share with you all today, listening, of different ideas, really just allowing you the opportunity to have that freedom to openly talk about it. Talk to your spouse or significant other about it. Talk to them about how did they grow up with money? What was it like? You might discover something behind it. Have your kids be a part of it. That's your history. Just as important it is to tell them your grandmother's stories, it's important to talk about those things. And it helps, I feel like, really bring out something that a lot of times we put in a dark corner. Yes. And if we can bring it into the light and be more open about it, and it becomes more honest. And so that sweet little gift bag of pennies for us to put on our new roof was her way of saying, I love you, Mom and Dad. Don't want you to be worried. I want to be a part of this. And we were able to embrace her from that and say, oh, honey, thank you. Just thank you, right? And accept her generosity, because it wasn't the money itself. Money is a tangible object. It's a physical thing. And yet what she was really trying to convey are the feelings. And she was trying to convey the help. That's what money also can do, is stir some emotion. And
That's
so
right.
with that, talk about the emotion side as much or even more than you're talking about the physical financial side.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the fact that money can promote generosity, like just
Mm.
like what you said with your daughter. So, and you know, when we were talking about different ways that we've talked to our children or, you know, about money, one thing that we had talked about earlier was some of the different books that we've read with our children. And so definitely wanted to, we'll put in the show notes some of the books. And Jamie Bosse she's also a certified financial planner, and she has written a couple of super cute books about Milton the pup, and how first he's bringing home the bacon for the first book. And then the second is that he has a friend named Molly who is making saving a habit. And so those are just super, I mean, my boys enjoy those books so much. They just love the concept, and they really enjoyed just both of those books, and they knew about the money. Jamie's teaching about each coin in the book and in the books. And so those are fantastic. Another one that I've read with my kids is The Four Money Bears by Matt Gardner. He's also a certified financial planner. And this one takes it one step further. So usually when you talk about money, you talk about spending, saving, and you might hear sharing or giving. Sometimes it's just easier with the three S's. But Mac takes it one more step, and he has the fourth Money Bears talking about investing. So that brings just that concept in, again, very basic, but kids love the book. And so that's going to be in our show notes as well with the link.
Yep. And we couldn't not have Dr. Seuss as one of our mini books because he writes about everything, right? And
Yeah.
there's also a couple other books that are in there. If You Made a Million by David Schwartz. And then National Geographic has a great one on everything money. Most of the books we're offering up today are for littles. That's kind of the stage of life we're in. But if you have older kids and want to hear more about how to teach teenagers or even mid adults about money, put it in the show notes. Ask us your questions there, and we'd love to jump on and do another one of these. And Maggie, I must say before we jump off, there is a great NPR interview with our friend Jen Hemphill, who is also an AFC, and she talks to him on NPR Life Kit and tells about what do you want to teach your kids about money. And there's so many concepts that we talked about here today, the money history, money scripts. She talks about how she grew up in Colombia and how she remembers growing up always in need and how she wanted to change those for her kids. So if you want to find out more for you and how to talk to your kids about money, we highly recommend Jen's interview on NPR. We're so
Absolutely.
glad you would join us today, and we are looking forward to having you on for next time. We've shifted to a once a month event, and Maggie, I think it's going to be a fun one in October. Do we already have some insight on that you want to share?
Yeah. So speaking of Jamie Bosse, so she has also written a book called Money Boss Mom, and that just came out. And that is for young adults and just taking your finances and getting empowered about them. And so we are really looking forward to talking with Jamie and the new book that just came out.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you again next month.